Kobe Bryant was one of the most visibly intense competitors the NBA has ever produced. He played angry. He studied opponents the way opposing generals studied troop movements. He prepared for games with a kind of detailed obsession that made people uncomfortable when they heard about it in detail. The visible energy of his competitive identity was unmistakable from 50 rows away. So when Kobe identified calmness as Stephen Curry's most dangerous quality, the statement requires more examination than it typically receives. Not the shooting, not the handles, not the footwork or the release or the off-ball movement that has made every defense in the league recalibrate its positioning since approximately 2015. Calmness.
It's impossible to talk about the Warriors without probably isolating Steph Curry for part of the conversation. When you see him now, Kobe, what do you think of when you watch Steph Curry?
I see a calmness about him. I see a calmness about him, and I think it's something that a lot of players don't understand. I think the fans, it's very hard for the fans to really understand what I'm saying.
Almost nobody who covered Steph Curry's rise to the position he now holds in the historical record of the sport framed his career through that specific lens. Coverage focused on the shooting percentages, on the three-point records, on the unanimous MVP, on the cultural shift in how basketball is played at every level from youth leagues to the professional game. All of that coverage was accurate. None of it was what Kobe was describing. What Kobe was describing is the specific quality that made the shooting percentages sustainable, and the records achievable, and the cultural shift permanent rather than temporary.
And when a player has the skills and has trained himself to have the skills to be able to shoot, dribble, left, right, etc., and then you mix that with this calmness and poise, then you have a serious problem in your hands. And so when I watch him play, that's what I see.
Watch Stephen Curry after he makes one of the largest shots of any given game. He rarely screams, he rarely pounds his chest, he rarely does anything that signals to the defense that he understands the magnitude of what just happened. He jogs back on defense, he points toward the teammate who set the screen, he smiles, he gets ready for the next possession. The natural reading of that behavior is that Curry is composed, that he has been in enough big moments to have developed composure as a skill.
Curry, way downtown, bang! He's not from this planet. Well, anybody else in the world, that's a horrible shot.
It's a great shot because it's Steph Curry. Steph gets to shoot whenever he wants.
That reading is correct but insufficient. The more precise reading is that Curry does not experience the moment as big in the way that most players experience big moments because his confidence does not derive from the outcome of the shot he just made. It derives from the thousands of iterations of that shot that he executed in empty gyms before the season started. And in those gyms, nothing was at stake except the quality of the repetition. The confidence is upstream of the game. The game is just where it becomes visible. That is what Kobe identified, and that is why the identification was significant coming from him specifically.
Have to use it, Curry, way downtown, bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! With 0.6 of a second remaining!
Kobe's own confidence came from the same source, but expressed itself in a completely different emotional register. Kobe played with visible ferocity, with an intensity that opposing players described as almost hostile, with a competitive edge that appeared on his face before he even touched the ball. His preparation produced confidence, and that confidence expressed itself as controlled aggression. Curry's preparation produced the same confidence and expressed it as peace. Almost nobody watching Curry in the early years of his career was asking why he was calm. The basketball world was asking whether he could stay healthy, whether his ankle problems would truncate a promising career, whether a player his size could sustain that level of production against the elite defensive attention that the league's best teams would eventually organize against him specifically. Those were the publicly available questions. The answer to all of them was the same answer, and the answer was the calmness that Kobe had identified before the questions were fully formed.
You mix that with this calmness and poise, then you have a serious problem.
Steph Curry is the greatest shooter God has ever created.
The 2015-16 season is the statistical fact of this story, and the statistics require the specific framing that the calmness provides before they make full sense. 402 made three-pointers, which shattered the previous record in a way that made people wonder whether the record should be categorized as a different kind of achievement entirely. Over 30 points per game, better than 50% from the field, better than 45% from three, better than 90% from the free throw line. The first unanimous most valuable player in the history of the award.
First unanimous MVP in NBA history, the 2015-16 Kia NBA Most Valuable Player, Stephen Curry.
Read that again. Michael Jordan was never unanimous. LeBron James was never unanimous. Shaquille O'Neal at the peak of his dominance and missed by 1 vote. Stephen Curry became the first, and the reason he became the first is not that he was statistically more dominant than those players in the seasons when they won MVP. It is that voters recognized they were watching something that required a category of its own, and the category was not just shooting. It was the combination of shooting and calmness that produced a player who could generate those numbers while appearing to be operating at approximately 80% of his maximum effort. That appearance is the most terrifying thing about him, and it is the thing Kobe recognized before the statistics existed to make the case.
Julia banging with Ashik. Steph Curry 3. Couldn't quite get the return pass. Iguodala steal. Numbers everywhere. Steph with the reload 3. Good!
If you are defending a player who appears to be operating at 80% and he makes 9 of 10 threes, you face an impossible calibration problem. Tightening the coverage might produce the response the coverage was designed to prevent. Playing off him to preserve your defensive energy produces the outcome you were trying to avoid. And in both cases, you are dealing with a player who looks the same either way, who is not providing you with emotional feedback that signals whether your approach is affecting him. The specific mechanism by which calmness translates into competitive advantage is worth making explicit, because it operates differently from how most people who use the word understand it. Calmness in the context of high-pressure performance is not the absence of awareness. Curry is fully aware that the shot matters. He is aware of the score, the time remaining, the defensive scheme being applied to him, the positioning of every relevant player on the floor. The awareness is complete. What is absent is the emotional amplification of that awareness into something that disrupts the physical execution of the movement. The shot he hits with 2 seconds left in a deciding game, and the shot he hits in the first quarter of a blowout look identical on film because they are produced by the same process, executed in the same state, drawing on the same preparation. The stakes do not change the mechanics, because the mechanics were not built around the stakes. That is why Kobe called calmness a weapon. It is not a passive quality. It is an active disruption of the defensive communication that allows defenses to make real-time adjustments based on what a player's body language is telling them.
Then they put them 30 in the game, and he got him back into it so easily. He makes shots so quickly, and he looked incredible after a couple months off, and it was a tough one. But
the Kevin Durant era is the chapter of the Curry story that the standard basketball conversation handles most carelessly, because the standard conversation treats it as a diminishment of what Curry accomplished rather than as an additional demonstration of the same quality Kobe had identified. When Durant arrived in Golden State, Curry lost touches, lost shots, lost possessions, and lost the primary creation role that his unanimous MVP season had been built around. The public conversation was almost entirely focused on what it meant for Curry's individual legacy. The conversation that Kobe's framing suggests is more interesting is what it demonstrates about the calmness. A player whose confidence derives from his preparation, accepting a reduction in role without any visible disruption to his production, his effort, or his apparent state of mind, is demonstrating something genuinely rare. Most elite players cannot do this. Their confidence is tied to the possession count and the shot volume and the primary creator label in ways that make reduction feel like diminishment. Curry accepted the reduced role, continued producing at a level that would have been the lead story on any other team, and won championships in both 2017 and 2018. He was the same player in fewer possessions, because the foundation was not built on the possessions.
The only thing Steph Curry has not done that those other guys have done is the finishing dunk.
Then came the 2016 finals and the blown 3-1 lead, and for a brief period the basketball world ran its oldest argument past the newest evidence. Too small, could not lead a championship team when the game got truly hard. The criticism arrived faster than the analysis of what had actually happened, which is that Curry played through a knee injury in the conference finals, and that the historical rarity of blowing a 3-1 lead speaks more to the quality of the opponent than to any fundamental limitation in the player who led the team there. Almost nobody applying the failed under pressure narrative to Curry in 2016 was accounting for the knee. Almost nobody was asking what the games looked like from his perspective rather than from the outside. What followed was the answer that Kobe had already predicted when he identified the calmness. Not an emotional response to the criticism, not a change in approach or style or personality, just the same preparation, the same work, the same relationship with repetition, applied to the next available opportunity.
Ahead it goes to Lee, back to Steph for the lead.
The 2020-21 season without Klay Thompson is the most revealing chapter of this story because it removed the supporting structure and left the raw question on the table. What is Stephen Curry? when there is no dynasty around him? The answer was 32 points per game, his second scoring title, 42% from 3 on 337 made threes, and a Warriors team that had finished with the league's worst record the previous season, making the play-in tournament. The defensive attention that season was described by multiple opposing players as something they had never experienced before, including double teams beginning 35 feet from the basket. It was not enough, and Curry did not respond to the doubled attention by becoming visibly frustrated or forcing early shots or collapsing into the kind of inconsistency that follows when a player's confidence is tied to his recent production. He responded by making everyone else on the floor aware of the space it created, by doing the same thing he had always done in the same way he had always done it. Calmness in the context of that defensive attention is not a neutral quality. It is a specific and devastating strategic response because it communicates to the defense that increasing the pressure is not working, and defenses that realize their pressure is not working have to choose between maintaining it and acknowledging that they have no better option.
Bender off the bench. Curry steps back, three-pointer, got it! Steph Curry, his first.
The 2022 championship is where Curry collected the Finals MVP that had been used as a critique throughout his career. Game 4 against the Celtics in Boston, with the Warriors trailing 2-1, on the road in one of the loudest buildings in professional basketball, he produced 43 points and 10 rebounds. The Celtics had a young, athletic, well-coached defense. They knew what was coming. They had built their entire defensive scheme around eliminating exactly this kind of production from exactly this player and exactly these circumstances. It was not enough either. The gold medal in Paris, the 36 points against Serbia in the semifinals, the 4 consecutive threes in the gold medal game against France when every person in the arena understood what was happening, and the French defense was organized specifically to prevent it. All of that was the same thing, expressed in a different setting. Not a different Curry, the same one, applied to a new context. The 4,300 made three-pointers is the statistical artifact of the cultural change. Players entered the NBA modeling their games after him at every level, and none of them could replicate him because the shooting was never the actual thing. The mindset was the actual thing, and mindset is not a skill that transfers through imitation. When Curry misses a shot, his relationship with the next shot does not change, because the confidence behind the next shot was not produced by the previous one. It was produced by the repetition that occurred before either of them happened, in gyms where nobody was watching and nothing was at stake except the quality of the work. The loudest player on the floor is not always the most dangerous. Sometimes the most dangerous one is the quietest, the one who is smiling while everyone else is working out a defensive adjustment, the one whose confidence appears to be a fixed property rather than a variable that the defense can manipulate. Kobe saw it before the unanimous MVP, before the 4 championships, before the all-time records, and the cultural revolution that changed what every level of the sport teaches young players to practice. He saw it precisely because he recognized it, because his own preparation had produced a similar internal state, even though it expressed itself in a completely different external manner. Legends recognize legends before the rest of the world does, because they have access to the only information that actually predicts outcomes. They know what the preparation feels like from the inside. The calmest player on the floor was also the most dangerous. Every defense eventually figured this out. None of them found a solution. Kobe simply knew it first. Drop it in the comment section below. Is Stephen Curry the most influential player in basketball history in terms of how he changed the game? And is the calmness the specific quality that made everything else possible? Hit like, subscribe, and check out one of the videos on your screen right now.